Hi, Statesman Nation. We are here with head men's lacrosse coach Luke Christiansen as we preview the 2022 season. Season number 3 overall here at William Penn. Kind of 2 1/4 type thing after the COVID and all that. But, Coach, appreciate you sitting down with us for a few minutes. Let's talk, before we get into the full year, let's back up and talk about the 2021 season, the actual first full year of William Penn men's lacrosse.
Yeah, that 2021 season was really crucial to our development as a program. Obviously with 2020 being cut short, last year was really our first full season. And, just being able to have those games that were kind of toss-up games, games where you had to learn to win were extremely important for us. And, I would say, the highlight, of last season, kind of some of the most valuable experience we had was down the stretch, of making the KCAC quarterfinals and winning a game on the road against a veteran team, and then going to the semifinals, and being knotted up at the halftime, before ultimately, faltering, to the team that ended up winning the conference. So those experiences are extremely valuable, right? You can't buy those experiences. So being able to earn those in our first full season of competition was huge.
Yeah, definitely. Let's fast forward a little bit and talk about recruiting. You had mentioned before we got on film here talking about how, year one was good. You had some depth, for a first-year program. Obviously, year 2 being better, and now year 3 really sitting where you kind of want to be with, having over 30 guys fully eligible and healthy and all of that. Just talk about how the recruiting process went the last year, I guess, going into this year.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing, recruiting-wise, is that we retained at an extremely high level. So from last year, we brought back, I believe it's 29 of 32. We got one guy out on a service mission now, a few other guys, that just, lacrosse and school weren't in their path anymore. But we brought back everybody, who had started that previous year. So, the returning piece is huge, right? That continuity. And then we brought in a really strong freshman class this year, of 13 guys, all really capable contributors. And some are going to be, starting and contributing right away, so that is, that's just a huge piece, right, of building upon building. That first year, right, you're super thin, nobody has experience. Last year, finally had, a little bit of experience, right, but it was pretty minimal last year, and now plenty of guys with lots of game experience. And so the freshmen coming in are really just filling into more specific roles and specific needs that we had, and really more enabling us to play that we want to play the way that we want to play now. Last year, the goal was, hey, we want a winning record, and we're just going to scratch and claw to do everything we can to get that winning record. And, fortunately, we were able to accomplish that. But this year, we're a little more intentional of the way that we want to win, and that it's expected now. It's expected that we should be good and that we should win most of those games. And now it's kind of about getting over that hump and being able to win some of those bigger games now.
All right, well, let's break it down and see what this team's all made of. He said it's a lot of returners, so a lot of names that we're going to recognize. But let's talk about, let's go front to back. Let's talk about the attackers first.
Yeah, so on attack, we obviously, first and foremost, returned Boston Romero. He was second team all-KCAC last year, and he had a great fall. I've mentioned this before, probably one of our more improved players over the course of the fall, and really excited about what he's going to be able to do. And then at attack, we've got 2 freshmen that are going to be starting alongside him in Breck and Nate, and they bring some different elements that we haven't had the last few years, just in Breck being kind of an elite finisher type of attack, and Nate being, a quicker, dynamic, distributing type of attackman. And so that really opens up our attack. And then moving on to the midfield, that's probably where, our strength lies. We have 3 really, really solid midfield lines, which is pretty rare within our conference. Most teams maybe have 1 solid one, and we have 3, and so we feel really strongly about that. So we obviously have Collin, Baliva, and Eli Dillon returning in the midfield. They were, the two of the top midfielders in the conference last year as freshmen, so they returned in the midfield. And we've moved Brady, Treloar, and Tim Pennington from attack to midfield. A little bit more natural for them in the fact that they're both big, physical, really athletic guys. And so that move was very intentional to allow us, to really control the pace of games and to really be able to suffocate other teams, in the transition, in our ride, and really just dictate that tone. Because the huge difference between a good team and a great team is often the midfield. And so that's where we're hoping, with those moves there, we're turning Carter Lucas as well, Ryan Epps, they've been, very steady contributors, the last 2 years. And we expect nothing, the same from them. And then we've got a really good class, of freshmen that are going to contribute as well. Marcus Glass, Seth Reed, Dexter Tedesco, all extremely talented and going to make, some great impacts on that midfield.
Moving forward, then talking about, let's stay in the middle right there for a second. Let's talk about the face-off specialist. I know that you've had Ryan Swartz there, and he's been awesome, but you've added some depth there as well.
Yes. So Ryan, another one of those players who might be one of the more improved players on the rosters, and he had a great first 2 years. He already has 200 career face-off wins, which is nothing to sneeze at. There's a lot of guys that don't accomplish that for their entire career, and he's done that in a year and a half. So he's got a really good chance, of finishing with 400 or 500 career wins once it's all said and done. But he really took some things to heart that we wanted him to do during the off season. I think he felt a little bit of the heat of new guys coming in and really pushed himself, and he solidified himself. That he's should be the starter. Then we got Nick coming in as a freshman, who very heralded freshman. Was winning 80% of his faceoffs up there in Minnesota during high school, and he did great this fall. I think he was probably around 65-70% throughout the fall, so he did great. And then we have Jake Rodriguez coming back from an ACL injury. He was out last year, and he'll be our long stick face-off specialist there. And that'll really help us to diversify our face-offs and be able to combat when we do struggle with different things. If a guy's bigger than we're used to or quicker, having him will really help a long ways.
All right, let's go to the backside then. Let's talk about the defense and then the goalies.
Yeah, so defensively, starting off with our long stick midfielders, a freshman will be starting. Marcus Davis, he'll be starting at LSM for us. Joshua Bell, he'll be playing there as well, and Ethan O'Connell will both be playing LSM as well. Josh made the switch from midfield to LSM, and he's done really well with the switch. And then going to our defensive midfielders, right? So our short stick defensive midfielders, Riley West returns after a great freshman year last year, and so he should continue to improve and continue to be kind of one of the anchors of our defense, just being a good leader, very steady. Jose Merced, another guy who had a great year last year, continues to get better, and so those two really kind of solidify us in that D midfield. We also have some additions there. Ilis Cole returns, and he's been looking good. Ian West, Riley's brother, transferred over here, and he's getting his legs underneath him, and I expect good things from him as the season, goes along. Jonathan Bell, who played more offensive midfielder for us last year and came in as more of a face-off guy. He'll continue to face off a little bit, but he really thrived in the defensive role. We asked him to make that switch this fall, and he, really thrived into just being, really tenacious, and kind of gritty defender, and so he'll really help us, on that defensive side of, really getting after and being physical. And then moving to the long poles. Really kind of anchored by Caden Miller. So he had a good freshman year last year. We expect him to have a great sophomore year. He really made some improvements over the offseason, got better, and he's looking like a veteran player now. And then same with Pete Hebenstreet. Very high IQ with Pete. He coming off of surgery this fall, but he's looking really good. Might have to bring him along a little slowly. He's coming off of his surgery, but he looked great. And then Christopher Lauderdale. He's come a long ways over these first, 2.5 years, and he had a great fall. He was causing a lot of turnovers, creating a lot of havoc. And then lastly, Anthony Abramoff. We got him midway through the year last year, and I think he underestimated the transition from high school to college, and he's getting there now. Now that he's had that full year to kind of get himself ready, and he's looking really good. Lastly, with the goalies, really, really strong, right? We might be, have the best goalie room in the country. We've got 3, goalies that I feel comfortable with winning big games. So starting off first with Jeremy Smith, right? He was the primary starter last year. He's our senior. And so he gives us that veteran presence in goal where, gives us that security blanket. Eric Garrigan, right now he's, a sophomore, redshirt sophomore now. And he had a great fall, right? Like I don't think he let up more than 2 or 3 goals and a half, over our scrimmages in the fall. So he looked great. And then we've got Bubba as our freshman. And, he was one of the top goalies in Minnesota out of high school. And he's got all the talent in the world, and we have all the faith that he can go in and win us big games. But luckily for him, he doesn't have to year one. But we expect huge things out of him as well.
All right, let's switch over to the non-conference schedule. One that you said before was you did it strategically. Let's play some teams that are not maybe top 10 right away, so we get an opportunity to get our feet under us and everything. Obviously, you're able to practice today outside, but for the most part, you're in the Midwest, you're not going to be practicing outside too much before the season gets going. So obviously some lighter games, but then you get into some really tough games. You got a few top 10s, including number 2 Indiana Tech, later on in the year. So just kind of encapsulate what the non-conference season looks like for you guys.
Yeah, so we start off this Saturday with Cornell College, so kind of a local game here, so it should be really exciting. It's up in West Des Moines at the brand new Mid-American Energy Complex, pristine, spotless, brand new facility, and so that'll be a lot of fun. We're going to have the Des Moines lacrosse community involved, so it'll be a really great atmosphere, great opportunity for us to showcase some high quality college lacrosse to the local community. Cornell College they're a well coached, hard playing team. We're going to be deeper. We do have more talent, but they execute at a really high level. So our guys have to show up and execute, to match that. They got a lot of seniors like everybody right now, right? And so, if we, sleepwalk through this game, then they're going to make us pay. And so I really like this game to start because it's where we can make some mistakes, with the transition because we haven't been outside a lot. But we also have to show up. From there, we're going to make a trip over to Michigan, and we play Cleary. And so Cleary, younger program, a lot of freshmen, and so that'll be a good opportunity for us to get a lot of reps for all of our guys. And then we have a huge test against Michigan Dearborn. Michigan Dearborn is going to be a really tough team, right? Local state school there in Michigan. They are going to have talent, and they are going to be hungry to play because they had most of their season canceled last year. And they play a very, aggressive physical style. So that's going to be, a great test for us. Then we come back home and we have our first home game against Quincy, which is a D2 opponent. And, D2 lacrosse, pretty much all D2 lacrosse teams are going to be really solid. They're going to have talent. They're going to have some D1 transfers. They're going to have some Canadians. They're going to have, some pretty good polls. So it's going to be a good test for us to help get us ready going into our first conference game against Ottawa. But then we've got some really tough out-of-conference with Indiana Tech coming to us. Indiana Tech will be number 1 or number 2 when they're coming in here probably. And, we played them last year, so we know how tough they are. They play probably the most aggressive style of lacrosse in the NAI currently, as far as pressuring out on defense. And it rattled us last year as a freshman team. And so now it's time for our guys to show how much they've grown in that game and, respond to it. And especially we've got the game at home on a Saturday on that March 5th game. And so that's a huge opportunity to make a statement. Then we have Concordia out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I can't remember exactly what they're ranked, but they're ranked 6th or 7th currently. They were a tournament team last year. So going to be another big test, and they pretty much return everybody. And they're very high-powered offense, and so it's going to give us a great test. And I believe that kind of rounds out our out-of-conference there.
And then conference-wise, Columbia is, I think, preseason third, if I remember, third or fourth.
Yeah,
they're there. St. Ambrose there, Benedictine there, and we're picked fourth. Talk about just, how we figure into the whole conference slate, and I guess, kind of the expectations for where you think we can possibly land.
Yeah, with that darn COVID, pretty much all of those teams bring back the majority of their, key contributors. Columbia, did graduate, a good amount, but they brought in transfers at pretty much all of those places. They lost somebody, so you can't expect them, to take a big step back or even take a step back at all. So we have to go and take it. Ambrose brings back literally everybody from a team that was, fifth in the country last year, and they bring back everybody. So they're going to be extremely tough. They're Ambrose and us are the two deepest teams in the conference, and so that'll be a huge game. And then Benedictine, schematically might be the most difficult of those teams. That they do a few things schematically that can give you trouble, and they bring back a really, really good offense. And so all three of those teams, I feel extremely confident we can beat all three of those teams. We showed that last year, right? And losing by 2 goals to Columbia, losing by 2 goals to Ambrose. But we can lose to all of them too. So that top 4, and then you throw in Ottawa there as kind of a wild card with an extremely explosive offense. Should be a lot of parity there at the top of the conference, and so that's where it'll be fun. And it's just now our time to go. Hey, we've got experience, and we need to go. Win some of those bigger games against those top 3.
Segueing into that, what you just said, let's talk about keys to success. What's it going to take for the team to reach the goals that you guys have set for yourselves?
Yeah, so I would say it's some things I've hit on before. We made some strategic changes of moving some of our attackmen to midfield and getting as much athleticism in the midfield as we possibly could. We felt like, Brady and Tim, particularly, like we were kind of hiding them at attack last year. Whereas now that we move them to midfield, we're really highlighting their athleticism. And so that, to me, is one of the, it's kind of that huge key is really developing our midfield, allowing them to play, a two-way up-tempo style so that we're accentuating that athleticism. I believe we're the most athletic team in the conference. From my vantage point of the games last year, the only time we weren't the more athletic team was Indiana Tech and Reinhardt last year. So the number 1 and number 2 teams. And so we really need to embrace that, embrace, some of the keys that we've been looking at as far as transition. And those would really be the big things, right? Like if we're owning the middle of the field, I feel very confident, that we'll have some pretty good outcomes.
All right. Once again, Coach mentioned over in West Des Moines on Saturday, the team will open its 2022 season against Cornell. Not Cornell, New York, Cornell, Iowa, the Rams out of Division III. So if you have an opportunity, definitely go over, and I'm sure it's going to be an awesome facility, great game, and a great start to the season, and then a whole lot of home games coming down the pipe later on. So, Coach, best of luck this season in year 3, full year number 2. So,
yep. Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it.
Make sure you're keeping up with William Penn Athletics on social media so that you guys can keep up with stats, highlights, and make sure you know what to look forward to when it comes to Statesman Athletics.